the eternity cure. So Julie, tell us, how did you come up with the idea for the Blood of Eden series and the whole dystopian world?
Well, originally, I wasn't going to write a vampire series. Early in my writing career, I thought, I love vampires, but there are so many books of them out there. And this was in the middle of the entire Twilight craze. So I told myself I wasn't going to write a vampire series. And then my agent and I were talking, nearing the end of the Iron Face series. She asked me, okay, so what's next? What are you going to do after the Iron Face series wraps up? And I told her, well, I have this, post-apocalyptic idea. I have this idea for this world, this very dark, gritty, post-apocalyptic world that I've been toying with. I don't have a plot yet, and I don't have a story, but I do have this idea for this world. And she said, that's very interesting. What do you think about vampires? So I was like, okay, I'll think about it. So I got off the phone. I'm like, okay, so vampires, post-apocalyptic world, what would happen if I just put them together? And that's how the Blood of Eden series was born. It came out of the idea of what would happen if you stuck vampires in a dystopian. And for the series, I had to do a lot of research for the Blood of Eden series. It wasn't like the Iron Face series where, if I needed someone to, get to this part of the country, they could just, get there by fairy magic. There's no fairy magic. It was very dark and realistic, so I had to know, what would happen to the buildings after 60 years of being abandoned? What would happen to the roads? How long would it take for society to crumble? How long would it take for nature to overtake everything? So I did a lot of research online, and I found this wonderful series, the Discovery Channel's miniseries Life After People. And that basically answered the question of what would happen if humanity, all the humans in the world, just suddenly disappeared. How long would it take for everything to collapse? And that was really, really helpful. So I had to do a lot of research on making this world as realistic as possible, as realistic as a vampire series could be.
Well, you did a great job. It really feels like you're there and everything is destroyed. So one of the things that I love in the whole series is your villains. You do these wonderful, creepy, but very realistic villains, and this one has a doozy, Saren. Can you tell me, how did Saren come to be? He's a psycho vampire he's the greatest nemesis of Allie, the heroine of Blood of Eden. Was he inspired by anyone, or how did you get into that deep, dark place to create this creepy villain?
Saren is interesting. When I first created him in the Immortal Rules, he didn't have a big part. He came from, his backstory is one of the characters in the Immortal Rules betrayed him, and because of that, he went insane. And because he's a vampire, he has not a sliver of humanity left in him. So what would this deranged, psychotic, brilliant vampire do, and how would he come across? And in the Eternity Cure, I really got the chance to dig deep into his character, and it scared me a little because he is a character that you don't want to meet in a dark alley. He's just this very creepy, psychotic, crazy villain, but he also has a poetic quality to him. He speaks in riddles, he speaks in poetry, and I did want to make him as creepy as possible for the heroine to come upon this evil villain to fight. And Saren just kind of took over and took on a life of his own, which is kind of disturbing because I don't know where that came from.
Well, these characters are all they faced in the original book, the world had already been decimated by the plague. In the new book, the plague has come back, and now it seems like it's almost hopeless for saving anyone. So once people read this book, after your characters have faced all these hardships and overcome a lot of things, what do you hope people will take away from the Eternity Cure and Blood of Eden?
I want them to cry a lot in the end.
Julie does wonderful, tragic, satisfying endings for her books.
Through the despair and through the hopelessness, I do want people to take away this tiny sliver of hope. Even though the world is destroyed and it does seem hopeless, and this horrible, horrible thing has just happened in the end, I do want them to take away hope, and that, the hope that humanity can overcome and be better.
How did you feel when you finished this particular book?
A mix of sadness and a little bit of glee. Because I knew what people are going to think when they got to the last page, and I'm a little sadistic in that I take joy in their sadness. So,
well, Allie, the heroine, actually in the first book, The Immortal Rules, starts out as a human and has to make a terrible choice of die or become a vampire, and she has an absolute, utter hatred of vampires, but it's her choice to carry on and be in the world as a vampire or die. And of course, by book 2, we know she chose to become a vampire. But is there any hope for Allie to come to terms and find some kind of happiness at the end of this series? Or what do you see for her that wouldn't give away too much?
I see a lot of hardship, especially the way the Eternity Cure ended. I see a lot of hardship for Allie. She's going to have to fight the monster inside. She's going to have to fight her demon even more now, and it's getting stronger. But she's always been a resilient character. She's always been a survivor, and she's always been extremely stubborn. So I do see her at least overcoming the demon inside. Now, whether or not she gets a happy ending remains to be seen.
Now, you have the Iron Face series, you have the Blood of Eden series, and we've recently contracted a brand new series that we're not revealing a lot about yet, but that series has already been optioned for film by Universal, and they're starting to plan with you. How has the whole experience been of finding out about that deal?
That's been completely surreal. So the week after Harlequin contracted the series, Universal and some other studio, Hollywood, started to ask about it. So the week after I sold the series to Harlequin, I was on the phone with 4 different studios that week, and I was supposed to have a conference call with Paramount, and the night of the conference call where I was supposed to talk with Paramount Pictures, my phone service went down. So,
oh no, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I had to, after frantically emailing my agent, I drove 3 miles to Walmart. So I'm sitting in the Walmart, in the Walmart subway, having this conference call with Paramount Pictures in Subway. So that was kind of a surreal moment. It was like, when will this ever happen again,
But then the deal went through with Universal,
yes.
and more to come on that. We're all very excited for that news. And just for fun, to finish up, one of the things that Julie does for a creative outlet is to create little chibi clay figurines of all kinds of her characters, mythical creatures, all kinds of things. Tell us about doing that and what you've been doing with.
Well, I had been really, really busy with writing and everything, promoting, and the Eternity Cure coming out. I needed something to do to relax that wasn't typing. So I decided, just on a lark, to get this polymer clay called Fimo Sculpey and Sculpey polymer clay. And it just kind of happened. I just created these cute little figurines of my books and some other creatures, and I put them up on my blog. I'm like, hey, look what I did. And people's like, oh, are they for sale? You should sell them. How would I do that? And then they told me about Etsy. So I checked it out, and now I have an Etsy store with, you can buy these little clay figurines and of unicorns and dragons and griffins and little
And all
ashes
of your favorite
and
characters.
cucks and Zeke and Allie, they're up there too.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, I think they're wonderful. I hope you do create an entire Never Never out of clay. I think that would be fantastic. So I think I have really enjoyed talking with you, and it's always a pleasure and just an absolute privilege to work with Julie. She is a wonderfully talented and creative author.
Thank you.
And Harlequin Teen could not be more proud to be her publisher.
Thank you. Thank you.